You know, with a second sequel to this in development hell for so many years, it looks like with the newest film in this franchise, it has finally busted the curse. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and a brand new review series with the upcoming release of Ghostbusters Afterlife. This week, I'm going to go through all three of the other Ghostbusters movies, and once I get to my review of Ghostbusters Afterlife, I'm going to rank all four films. So we're kicking things off with the original 1984's Ghostbusters. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this movie were, if you already saw it or if you were planning on seeing it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's jump right into it, and let's talk about Ghostbusters. This focuses on three parapsychologists who are forced out of their university funding and set up shop as a unique ghost removal service in New York City, attracting frightened yet skeptical customers. So, I think Ghostbusters really needs no introduction, as it's a pop culture phenomenon and one of the most famous movie franchises of all time, and it was made at a time where everyone involved was on top of the comedy world, or at least close to it. It was made during a time when SNL alumnus comedies were huge pulls at the box office, all of which at least one of the main creative forces here worked on in some form or another. From Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd, both of whom also co-wrote this, to Bill Murray, to director Ivan Reitman. You had Stripes, Animal House, Caddyshack, The Blues Brothers, Trading Places. These are all considered iconic comedies. They were big hits at the time and are still looked back on fondly to this day. And even when this was initially being developed, there were even more SNL alumnus in mind for this, like Eddie Murphy and, before his untimely death, John Belushi, both of whom were also involved in at least one of the aforementioned projects each. So of all the SNL alumnus projects of the era, this was the one that topped them all. And I think this had such strongly positive reception due to a number of reasons. It was an original concept that combined aspects of comedy, action, and even a little bit of horror, though I wouldn't necessarily call this a horror comedy. It's also an, at the time, modern film that did a great job of evoking a sense of nostalgia, as it looked to modernize old ghost comedies, like the Abbott and Costello horror comedies, most of which people at the time, I'm sure, had fondness for. But most importantly, it was something that the whole family can enjoy, which gives it this universal appeal. And that was rare at the time for this entire cast and crew. All the movies I just mentioned a minute ago were R-rated comedies. People like Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis built their careers off more vulgar humor and adult-oriented jokes. So when this came around, its mix of clever comedy that adults could enjoy, as well as big action-packed set pieces that younger audiences can enjoy, came as a pleasant surprise. And because of its iconic characters, its costume designs, and the creatures and concepts it came up with, it's now a staple in pop culture. Even if you never saw the movie, I'm sure you've at least heard of it, and can recognize certain imagery, like the suits or characters like Slimer, if you just saw them in passing. Now, before we go any further, I do gotta be transparent. As iconic as this also wasn't a movie I necessarily grew up watching on repeat or anything. Now, it didn't take me till really late to see it. It wasn't something I had no interest in watching or rewatching, but it was just one of those movies that I only saw a few times growing up, and since then I've only rewatched it like once every few years or so. Which is wild because I'm especially a big Bill Murray fan. He's one of my favorite actor-comedians, plus I like the work of everyone else involved, mainly when they were at the height of their careers. But if anything, movies like Caddyshack, Trading Places, and Animal House, I've seen considerably more than I've seen this. So unlike a lot of other big fans of this movie, this isn't one I necessarily hold a lot of nostalgia for. Like, I don't find myself instantly quoting it every time. But to be clear, I still think it's an excellent movie. It's easy to see why Ghostbusters is as beloved as it is to this day, and it deserves every bit of praise that it gets. It's a great mix of slick, witty comedy, along with some memorable action-packed thrills that's a total blast every time I watch it. And let's start with what I think we can all agree is the best part of the movie, and that's Bill Murray. Now, not every single review at the time praised this movie as a whole, but almost every single review, positive or negative, did praise Bill Murray's performance. And it's not hard to see why. This is peak Bill Murray. This is an actor who's well known for his dry, sarcastic, deadpan humor, and this is that style cranked up to a T. It's a rarity that anything his character says or does is completely straightforward. He's good at what he does, and he takes it seriously to some degree, I guess, but he's always got to add some sort of insult or snarky quip in there.
Eddie, let's show this prehistoric bitch how we do things downtown.
He's also not your typical hero. Peter Venkman is what I'd call a lovable jerk. One contemporary review of the film compared Venkman to a Groucho Marx style character, and I think that couldn't be any more spot on. For those who haven't seen an old Marx Brothers movie, Groucho Marx always played a protagonist and always did the right thing, but technically everything he did would be in his own self-interest, and he'd also add insults left and right every time he showed up. Once you see the similarities between him and Venkman, it's hard to unsee.
You know, it's just occurred to me we really haven't had a completely successful test of this equipment.
I blame myself.
So do I.
Gentlemen, Ciccolini here may talk like an idiot and look like an idiot, but don't let that fool you. He really is an idiot.
Like when we first meet Venkman, he's doing this card reading with two people and he's having them guess what card he's holding. And even though one guy's getting the right answer, he's telling him it's wrong, which causes him to get a quick jolt while also trying to impress this girl that's taking part in this study. Now, while this sequence is funny, it's also not the greatest introduction to one of your main characters because you're supposed to see them do things that allow you to root for them right from the start. But this instead establishes a different sort of hero who isn't a bad guy, but he approaches every situation with a more cynical edge and can be a little rough around the edges. But he's someone we wind up liking a lot, and he's someone we can't help but just be so invested in. And while it's partially due to the writing for his character, it's mainly due to just how well Murray plays the character. He may come off like he doesn't have a care in the world, and he's always got something sarcastic to say, but he's smart, spontaneous, and he knows how to think outside of the box, being able to improvise if in a sticky situation. So his every move feels unpredictable, and you just want to see what he's going to do next. Now, there are times he clearly comes off like he's thinking about himself, but he's also not outright malicious, similar to a Groucho Marx character. Though if you get on his bad side, that's a whole different story, because then you do see a whole new side to him. Like when he goes up against Walter Peck, played by William Atherton, the head of the EPA, who tries shutting the Ghostbusters down later on in the film, because they go toe-to-toe with one another, in what winds up being some of the film's funniest moments.
Everything was fine with our system until the power grid was shut off by Dickless here.
They caused an explosion.
Is this true?
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
Another great set of interactions that doesn't involve his bad side is when he starts interacting with Dana Barrett, played by Sigourney Weaver, as her apartment is the portal to this supernatural world. He's the main Ghostbuster who repeatedly goes to her apartment and checks in with her. And even though he's going over to investigate first and foremost, he purposely makes sure to volunteer himself to be the one going over so he can flirt with her, though she'll clap back at him and make sure he doesn't take advantage, which made for a lot of fun interactions. Especially because Sigourney Weaver in general is just really solid in this movie, and proved how natural she is with this sort of material, and how much fun she can have with it. Like I said, in her scenes with Bill Murray, or even Rick Moranis, and more on him in a second, it's so much fun seeing her just go back at them with these subtle but funny jabs, or through the way that she just dismisses them or brushes them off.
I tried to disconnect the cable, but I couldn't get in, so you know what I did? I turned up my TV real loud too, so everyone would think that both our TVs had something wrong with it. Okay, so I'll see you later, huh? I'll give you a call.
But when we see her get possessed by this entity known as Zool, she really plays into the more over-the-top aspects of the story. Honestly, if anything, even though she was already acclaimed for her performance in Alien before this really got to show off her knack for sci-fi and action material ahead of Aliens, which totally reinvented her as a badass action star. She has such a blast with this, which is just the main takeaway to get from this movie in general. It's just a lot of fun, and it wants you to have fun with it. It has a lot of special effects that range from practical to stop-motion animation to everything in between, and even though it's focused on a story involving supernatural entities possessing people and unleashing these demonic entities upon New York City, it's presented in a way that allows us to take it just seriously enough by showcasing the destruction entities like the Demon Dogs or Gozar causes, but a lot of it's done in a very comedic or ridiculous manner, with some of the possessions being played for laughs, or most notably Gozar taking on the form of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. That way the film doesn't feel constantly bogged down in mundane exposition, nor does it feel like it undergoes these jarring shifts in tone. You feel the gravity of a situation, but you're also having fun while watching it. That's one thing I truly gotta commend this on. Like I said earlier, this balances a number of different tones and genres, but manages to make each of those tones feel like a consistent force all throughout the movie. That's something that's really not easy to accomplish, as there have been plenty of films that try to balance comedy and thrills and will veer too far off in one direction or the other at times. But this brings all that together with ease. There are maybe a couple of times here and there that might not be the case, which we'll get to shortly, but for the most part, this film does a fantastic job at tonal consistency, and it's all the more fun because of it. And that tonal consistency is aided by the film's fantastic soundtrack. Now, I mean, Ray Parker Jr.'s theme song is probably one of the most iconic theme songs ever, and I still love randomly throwing it on every so often. But even beyond that, the score by Elmer Bernstein is just wonderful. It's very quintessential 80s with its heavy use of synthesizers, and it's used in such a way where, as I've already said, the tones would complement each other so well. I think that's especially what helped give the situations a little bit of weight without throwing off the balance, because the score was never used for comedic effect, instead always opting to take on this eerie feel. Though not too eerie to the point where if something funny is said, it just feels disjointed. It wasn't so in your face with that feel that it made it seem like a different movie altogether or something. It just served as a nice reminder that even though jokes were getting cracked every few minutes and some of these monsters are ridiculous, this is still a movie about ghosts and demons wreaking havoc across the city, and we should still be concerned to a degree. And it's worth noting the way the tones would mix so well also made up a little for the fact that some of those special effects are clearly a product of their time. Like some of the stop motion is a little dated, and certain ghost effects that were done through animation look a little fake, but because the film's not asking you to take it that seriously anyway at any point, it doesn't really matter. Now, as far as the rest of the cast goes, another big standout for me was Rick Moranis as Louis Tully, Dana's dweeby neighbor. He's meant to have this very annoying and overbearing personality, but he's also very unaware of his own behavior, mainly because he's a chatterbox who goes on non-stop.
I was just exercising. I taped 20-minute workout on my machine and played it back at high speed, so it only took 10 minutes. I got a great workout. Good. You want to come in for a mineral water?
And even though he's kind of clingy with his crush on Dana, he's presented as ultimately harmless, with his main thing being that he just doesn't stop talking. And anything he says to just try impressing others is pretty funny, like when he talks about his workout routine, or at one point when he tells Dana how he thought her TV was on so loud, so he turned his TV on so loud so people thought it was his that was the problem. A lot of what he says is also said so fast and sometimes so nonchalantly that there are so many great little hidden gem lines thrown in there, and it fits so well with the overall deadpan style of humor that the film goes for. Like, some of those lines I either had a delayed reaction to them, or I didn't catch them on the first viewing, or even the first two viewings. And not only does it give this film plenty of rewatch value, as you're able to pick up on so many new lines you didn't catch that first time, but it also shows off so well how excellent of a comedic talent Rick Moranis is, and he's someone who I wish we got more of. I know why he retired, it's really unfortunate. I'm just saying, he's a fantastic comedic talent with such natural energy to him, and this is a great example of that. And also, we can't forget Annie Potts as Janine, the Ghostbusters secretary. There are only so many characters that can leave such an impact despite only having limited screen time, but this is one of those characters. I actually almost forgot she's barely in the movie until this most recent rewatch, just because she's just as beloved and talked about as the main four characters or Louis or Dana. But Annie Potts plays her to perfection as this very stereotypical rude New Yorker who answers the phone saying, "What do you want?" or making some blunt observation about whatever the group's up to. And nearly every line of dialogue she has is hilarious. It always hits. So despite the fact that her screen presence is limited, they make every moment count. And even the interactions with the ghosts themselves, every moment feels like it counts. Scenes like going after Slimer, or the demon dogs attacking New York, or Dana and Louis being possessed, or the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man causing destruction. Even though I've only seen this movie so many times, those moments always immediately pop out at me. Now, I mean, part of it is due to all the memorable dialogue spoken in each of those sequences as our characters go up against these respective entities, like all the quips Bill Murray makes, though part of it is also due to the creative designs given to each of these monsters. Even though a lot of this movie's charm is its cast and its sense of humor, it also makes sure that these aren't just generic-looking monsters. They're still designed in such a way and carry themselves in such a way that it makes them memorable. And it especially makes up for the fact that these aren't exactly the deepest movie villains around, though that's not what the movie's ultimately going for anyway. Now, I'm going to say something that I'm sure is going to be a little bit controversial, as I know this movie is beloved by nearly everyone who's seen it, and usually everyone says they have absolutely no problems with it whatsoever. But I do have some light criticisms. Not a lot, but there were one or two things that stuck out to me and I feel are worth bringing up. Now, I will say, I know the group of Peter, Ray, Egon, and Winston are iconic, and I know for many, no one can imagine any of these characters being portrayed by any other actor. But while I like all 4 of the main cast members, and I do think they all have great chemistry with one another, and I enjoyed all their performances, I actually don't think the other 3 are written as strongly as Venkman. I mean, in general, I like Dan Aykroyd, I like Harold Ramis, and I like Ernie Hudson. And each of them do have their moments here, and like I said, the chemistry among all 4 actors is wonderful. But I just don't think the dialogue given to the other 3 is quite as strong as Bill Murray's dialogue. At least not consistently as strong. And I know part of it is due to the fact that Murray improvised some of it, but still. It's good overall, don't get me wrong. I don't want this confused as a much bigger criticism than it really is, but there simply are just moments where they're given scenes or lines that don't stick out as much. And then Ernie Hudson, who comes in so late in the game, I felt he had the absolute least to do of everyone here. He had a few notable lines, a few decent exchanges with everyone, and he is charismatic like the others, but I always felt like he came off as the least defined of the group. He'll act as a foil for others, he'll make an observation, and he might keep the conversation moving forward, but sometimes it felt like he was just there and he didn't have quite as something meaningful to do. I get that the joke with him is that he's hired immediately before the others get to learn a thing about him, so he only knows so much about him right off the bat, and like I said, he does provide some solid lines when the 4 of them are all together, but I really wish we got a little more with him as the movie went on. Because Ernie Hudson is great, and this felt like this didn't fully utilize his talents. Now don't get me wrong about this. Like I said a number of times already, the chemistry among all 4 of these actors was overall fantastic. And I'm not saying all this like I thought these were boring or poorly written characters. I mean, they're all memorable at the end of the day. I'm just saying that not all 4 of them were always given equally strong material, and it showed in both their interactions and the way certain scenes played out. For the most part, it all worked. And in the grand scheme of things, they're just minor nitpicks. Ghostbusters is one of the most iconic comedies of all time, and it's not hard to see why. It's incredibly funny, being a rare mainstream comedy that gives us a consistently dry sense of humor, and it manages to balance those laughs out with an exciting mix of fantasy, action, and a little bit of horror, with memorable ghouls, demons, and monsters that our heroes have to go up against. Some of the effects clearly look a little dated, and there are times maybe it can feel a tad too dry, but for the most part, this is a memorable, fun-filled, quintessential 80s movie, and if you haven't seen it by now, it's one you should definitely get to. Ghostbusters gets a 9 out of 10. So stay tuned. Up next will be my review of the second film, Ghostbusters 2. But in the meantime, let me know, did you see Ghostbusters, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Is this one of your favorite movie franchises? Is this one of your favorite movies for any of the actors involved? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it, and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.